It is Doc Talk Tuesday with Doctor Jesse Morse, man. We got to call. That's our new name, man, on Tuesday. So we're right out the gate with a banger, man. Let's bring him in. Doc, what's up, brother?
How are you?
Man, sad events happened last night, man. It's football, I guess, but it sucks watching all your tweets, man. I love seeing your page grow. I get to see all the detail that you put into that, man. And we got a lot of people in here that follow your show now and your channel. Unfortunate with Nick Chubb. I'm glad he didn't have too bad of a vascular situation, apparently, as first thought, I guess, reported. But let me go back to the thumbnail that you're on our thumbnail here today. Aaron Rodgers. I saw what you wrote, the speed bridge and everything like that. And my mom's a doctor. Of course, I've been around it my whole life. Can you explain the speed bridge? And is it even a possibility, even with the blood platelets and all those things, that he can really come back and play?
Second Monday in a row, we had a catastrophic potential NFL-altering injury.
God.
Last week's was more significant because of the position, but last night's was more detrimental to the career. I will say that. We don't know the specifics of where Rodgers tore his, but it's almost always at the watershed area, which is about two thumbnails up from the heel where it attaches to the heel. And that area has a very poor blood supply, which is why it doesn't heal, which is why it traditionally tears there. The speed bridge is a newer technique that a lot of the foot and ankle surgeons are doing, usually insertional tears. It's essentially putting an internal brace and then tying it in and then bringing the two margins of the Achilles together. So they're coming back faster than a traditional Achilles repair, which is usually like 12 months. But we've seen guys come 6-ish months. Elatrash, who's the team doc for the Rams and a bunch of other guys, did Cam Akers'. He came back in 5.5 months, but he didn't look good at all, expectedly so. And that's who Rodgers went to. He probably had basically the same type. It's a smaller insertion. It does a lot better. I'd probably give him 6 weeks, and then you're going to hit him with a whole lot of regenerative medicine options, your stem cell, your PRP. Some of the guys are doing this in the OR, and I would not be surprised if Elatrash did some in the OR, whether it's bone marrow or amniotic allograft or a PRP, which is from the blood. That will just augment and help the healing. The issue Rodgers is facing is a timing one. First of all, this is usually a minimum of 6-month recovery. He has 4. And he's 40. Not a traditional 40, but he's still 40. Why does that matter? Well, you heal a lot better at 28 than you do at 21, which sounds kind of funny, but it's true. That's why you start seeing the guys struggle at the latter half of their career before the beginning. And our stem cell lines dramatically drop with each decade. So at 15, they're beautiful. At 25, they're still good, but they're not as good. 35, so on and so forth. So he has a lot less stem cells to heal. The other thing is, speaking with someone who does a lot of speed bridges and a lot of Achilles repairs, the best he's ever had anyone do is box jumps at 4 months. Best he's ever had. So I love the motivation. I love the hope. I just don't think it's realistic per se. But I'd love to see him do it. I mean, it would be bananas. But the other thing I think we're missing here is we have to assume the Jets are making the playoffs.
Yeah, right.
Thank you.
And now you have Mahomes with a new money contract. Burrow is obviously not looking the best, but you have Lamar, you have Allen, you have Tua, who looks fantastic. You have, all of these elite teams in the AFC. Like, even if he comes back, is it for naught, quote unquote, for naught? So I have really not much of a question if he's going to come back next year, because he's not going to end his career like that, especially given how he's, all the chaos he created at the end of his career. But just an unfortunate injury. Obviously, it was confirmed, but we'll see. I'd love to see him come back and be relatively ready in mid-January, but I don't think it's going to matter.
Let me transition to college real quick. Colorado State, I thought was the best football game of the year because of the animosity and buildup, of course. So the Hunter kid, he gets hit, and I had 2 lacerations playing. I got hit over a pile. I landed on the ball, which is crazy. Did not realize it. I played another quarter. Then I was rushed to the hospital when the doctor found out. They saw me throwing up, and they saw my color skin change. And then I threw the ball to the receiver. He dropped it, caught it, and lacerated his liver. And I said right when it happened, his liver. And sure enough, that's what happened. Give us an update on that. What does it look like? How did it happen to all the common fan out here? Like, how did it actually happen? And then what's the recovery, and will he be back?
Yeah, so this was a gnarly game. Obviously on the East Coast, the timing was a little crazy, so I didn't get to appreciate a lot of it. But and obviously the hit was, call it dirty, call it whatever you want to call it. It was ugly. And it was just a perfect angle where it was underneath the shoulder pads and probably near 10th, 11th, 12th, with the lower ribs, the floating ribs, we call them. And the angle it took either hit his liver directly and we call rupture the capsule, which is kind of like a balloon, or fractured his rib. And then that turned into a sharp object, which then cut the liver. So obviously there's a couple different ways to do it. The liver has a bunch of different lobes and a bunch of different parts, depending on the severity of the tear and how big it was, how much it was bleeding, will depend on how long it takes him to get back. I'm assuming he had some blood put into the peritoneum or the abdominal cavity because of just sheer bleeding and cutting something that's not supposed to be cut. And then you have the stability factor. Hey, is he stable enough to function right now? And the other part of it is, if there is a rib fracture, that's going to be what's probably going to hold him out the longest, because they take about 3 weeks to heal up. Most of you have probably had rib injuries in some capacity playing football. They're awful. Oh my God, awful.
Yeah, the most pain I've ever been in.
Yeah, you can't breathe, you can't cough, you can't sneeze, you can't bend. I mean, you can't do anything. So imagine thinking about playing again and getting hit again. It's like the last thing you want to think about. But so, I mean, and you have to wait for those ribs to heal over or start to heal over, which usually takes about 3 weeks, before you can potentially go back on the field. Because yes, you can put a Kevlar or whatever they want to call them vest, but that's not going to that's not going to help them to heal. That just prevents them from hopefully not fracturing more. And if it is fractured and you have lung right here, you have organs right here, like you're at risk for tearing more stuff. So this isn't just about a game, right? This is about, a kid's life or, stability in terms of health. Unfortunately, this may be bigger than the game. So I think 3-4 weeks is best case scenario.
Ooh, best case. So you're saying there's a chance it could be even longer, 5-6 potentially.
Yeah, I mean, it depends on exactly what was torn, what was injured, the severity of the fracture. Yeah. I mean, I'm not really worried about the pain per se, because eventually they can handle that. You just need to make sure that if he gets hit again there, how stable is he? How risky is this going to be? Because that unfortunately going to target it. It's just
how important is the spleen in all this? Because I heard the spleen might be affected.
Oh yeah. So the spleen is thankfully on the opposite side. So we got a little lucky in terms of body positioning. But the spleen is like a faucet that you cannot turn off. So if the spleen is cut, you just bleed, and they usually have to do a splenectomy or removal or partial removal, which then creates a whole new set of problems.
Damn. Wow. Doc, before Smitty asks you, I appreciate you coming in. I know you're busy. Last week, Saquon Barkley hobbled off. That game, that particular running back, we know the running back market is low. The running backs had a meeting. They want to get the marketplace, the value up for what they're worth. We got Jonathan Taylor sitting out. But that Saquon Barkley incident happened on grass. Last night's incident was on grass. Is it fair to say, too, that this is just it's always been a violent sport, even though we're not violent anymore in the sport? The rules have changed a little bit. from my era to this new one, to Smitty's era. But the grass versus turf deal, that injury happens on either surface, no?
Oh yeah. That both of them were because the person was getting struck or landed on by another player. It doesn't matter what surface you're on. Now, I'll give you a quick example. Anthony Richardson's concussion, which he self-presented. He went to the team and said, hey, yeah, I have symptoms. If that was on grass, it's less likely he would have had a concussion. Still possible, obviously. But remember, grass in mid September is not too bad, depending on where you're at in the country. Underneath turf is concrete, and that's the end of it. So, soft certain injuries, in my head, I think the turf leads to some micro tearing as opposed to, you might micro tear 1,000 times and then you're on grass one day and just the final straw. So I think it's a combination effect. It's like not where injury happened. I think in general, playing on the turf leads to more issues than if you always played on grass. But this is a violent sport. If Nick Chubb didn't have a guy laying down and another guy literally hitting him across the top and Chubb's foot literally planted underneath guy, not like a foot from him, then it wouldn't matter what surface it was in. Turf would have probably been even worse because then the foot would have been engaged as opposed to be able to, relieve.
Probably would have been a compound fracture, huh?
You name it, it could have been. There's so many things this could have already been, but that could have been worse. That would have been, which sounds crazy, but it would have been probably even worse because then the cleats likely would have stuck into the turf. So then the foot doesn't move, but everything else moves.
Golly, I started to cringe a little bit when I just think about that injury. It was such a bad one, man. And like you said, there's been so many just bad injuries going on. Another one I want to talk about because we saw head coach for the Bengals, Zach Taylor, kind of hint at the possibility of benching Joe Burrow for next week. What's the latest on that calf injury, man? I mean, we obviously knew he set out during camp, and some people were saying that he should wait a few weeks before he starts playing. Obviously, he elected not to do that. Did not look like himself these first 2 weeks. Started to look a little better, last game here in the second half, but still wasn't fully himself. Saw him kind of limping after the game. Like, what's the latest on Joe Burrow? Is he hurt? Is he injured?
Yeah, I mean, so the issue with calf injuries is that they're notorious for re-injury. They have a very poor blood supply. They're always being used every single time you walk or step or run or push, always being used. So unfortunately, they're very high risk. Usually you don't worry about it 6 weeks later, especially if you're babying it for 3 weeks or whatever, but that's literally what they did. And as a result, he re-injured it. So you're kind of playing with fire here. I'm going to remove their record for a second. If he re-injures it again this week, hypothetically he plays, he re-injures it, he's probably out a month. If they decide to err on the side of caution and sit him this week, I don't know how much a week is going to do. You just gave him 6 weeks and he just injured it. Damn. What is a week going to do? Yeah, I mean, is it going to hurt? It's not going to hurt. It's going to help, obviously. You saw the lines change for that Monday night game. That's telling. Vegas knows. We know that. So if you caught it, yesterday morning, it was 6.5 or whatever it was. Now it's like 2 or what, and I wouldn't be surprised if it goes even more. There's no easy solution here. They either risk their franchise quarterback for a while, or they roll the dice, hope he does okay, and they possibly win, but then they have a short week, right? So it's like, they're not going to have another Monday night game, and I don't think buys don't start until I think week 5. So you're kind of, there's no easy solution here. This is tough. This is very tough.
Doc, we got great guys listening to you. Brian Urlacher, Eric Weddle, Trent Richardson, who are on the show every week. And they're all on the same page with you, like with the turf and everything. But they're also on the page with me as far as just straight practice, getting, getting socked in the mouth every day and understanding that it's it's a bang bang type of play that you can't prepare for if you don't play at all for 4 or 5 games for 4 or 5 weeks. Do you think that has to do with the height and injuries this year so far? We had an all-time, I think, 900 last year, I want to say. This year right now we're already on pace to break that by far. Soft tissue is Eric Weddle's big thing. He's like, man, I came back for the Super Bowl run with the Rams late. I stayed in tip-top shape. But what people don't talk about, Doc, and then you could shed on, like, the Hunter kid not being maybe he's healing, but people don't understand he can't run and get in shape either. So when he does come back in 6 weeks, like, you're out of shape as hell. So really, when is it healthy for that? So Weddle talks about all the time, the turf is a number one to them component. But is it the part of just bang bang and getting the feet playing? Do you think there's a height in that?
So think of it this way, and I'll bring it back to Rodgers in a minute. If you the NFL is a business, we know that. So what did they do? 2 years ago, they said, all right, we're going to take away a preseason game, but we're going to add a real game at the end of the season because obviously they make a lot more money if it's a real game. But now what happens? Maybe the starters play one game or half of a quarter or a quarter in preseason. So now they have 20 minutes of real work getting hit, and then everything else is on the practice field. They're not ramping up appropriately. It's getting much harder in general. So it's a lot harder to push in July than it was 10 years ago or whatever, which just sounds silly, but you could justify it. Then the soft tissue injuries are real. That's the problem. We see a significant increase every year in preseason. And then there's a significant increase in the first 6 weeks of the season. We just finished week 2. We're not even a third of the way to the end of the normal risk. So it's crazy, but unfortunately, yes. I think there's multiple levels to it. Guys are training, longer and year round. Many of them train down here in Miami. I know there's several spots that they'll go to, but I just don't think it's ever as hard as when you're actually getting yelled at on the field and performing for your boss or, whatever. Yeah. And I think that's part of it. And it's just unfortunate because these soft tissues, what we saw Deontay Johnson go on IR. We saw Dolchik go on IR. We have several guys already banged up. And then the other thing, bring it back to Rodgers. If Rodgers is repairing his, reconstructing his Achilles, what happens to the other Achilles? He can't push it. What are you going to run on one leg? So now you're going to have natural atrophy or lack of pushing it. So now you basically have to push 2 legs once he can start ramping up. So at about 6 to 10, 12 weeks, maybe he can get in an anti-gravity treadmill and start pushing it. But he can't do a whole lot with his good leg until then. We don't think of that.
Fantasy league guys in here, and you do a lot of that. AR5, should you pick him or not this week? Is he out?
He's a high-risk reconcussion candidate because of his playing style. The data shows about 70 to 80% of, we'll say fantasy, positions miss 0 to 1 week. We won't know really until Thursday. Thursday is the day. You need to have, it's a 5-step protocol. 6 is game day, but the first, you basically have to have a limited practice on day 4, which is usually Thursday. And if you don't have that, you can't, if they're playing Sunday, you're not gonna be able to play. If they have a limited practice on Thursday, if they make it to a full practice on Friday, you usually get cleared for Sunday. So it usually it takes 24 hours for each step. So it's like, I want to go from 1 to 5. You can't do that if you don't have 5 days. That's why if someone sustains a concussion on Sunday, they are automatically out on Thursday because there's just not enough days to clear the protocol.
That makes a lot of sense. And then obviously we talked a little bit about Saquon got hurt the other day. For the fantasy users like myself who picked Saquon first or second during their fantasy draft, what suggestions do you have when it comes to that? Should he obviously be on the bench probably the next couple of weeks because of this ankle situation? And do you have anybody, any sleepers, I would say, as far as the running back position that comes to your mind as guys who could possibly replace Saquon while he's on the shelf?
So, in my opinion, this is the Giants getting cute and saying this is a high ankle sprain without saying this is a high ankle sprain. I don't care. Ordinary, what the hell does ordinary mean? You have 3 types of ankle sprains: lateral, traditional; medial, which is super rare. That's what Michael Thomas had; and then high ankle, which is what, unfortunately, a lot of these guys have. If you were to show me, if I were to play Saquon's video, that would be a perfect example of a high ankle. That would literally be what you would show someone. Right. That's what they look like. Could it have been a lateral? Yeah, but it's just, and this is the second time he's had a high ankle on that one. This is his same ACL knee. So, and guys are never the same after a high ankle until the offseason, 6 months usually. They're better each week, but it's a rotational injury. You can't cut and pivot because the bones want to separate, and that's what causes so much pain. So in my opinion, if I'm a fantasy guy and I have him in a couple leagues, I'm selling him. I know it sounds crazy, but if you don't make the playoffs, what good is it?
No doubt.
The guy on the field that replaced Chubb last night is the number one option, assuming Kyren Williams is gone.
That's a good
and
point.
Kareem Hunt's got to be on the called list today.
He is. But, when you look at the data, the underlying data for Kareem, his stats were worse last year than Dalvin, than Fournette, than Zeke. He did not look good. And we saw Zeke, he doesn't really do a whole lot. Dalvin hasn't really done a whole lot. Fournette, we haven't even heard of him. We don't know what, he's MIA. So it's like, I know we want to just plug and play, but I think that the wear and tear is paid its dues for Hunt.
Hey, Doc, I know you're getting out of here. One question: is Chubb done?
Definitely done for the season. Multi-ligament, usually meaning ACL, MCL, probably PCL, meniscus.
Same knee, right? As before too.
Same knee, which is bananas. The end, and almost definitely a dislocation. Thankfully, he got the vascular part of it was okay, because that would have been detrimental. I won't put it past him to try to come back, but this is a 15-month injury. This is not an easy injury to come back from. Yeah. So, due to get his pedigree, yes, they will give him a run again if he wants to. But this was bad.
Yeah. Great stuff, Doc. I appreciate you, brother. Have a good day, man, and I'll see you next week.
Take care.
All right, guys.
Yeah. Hey, Doc always coming here not only with the exclusive information, the full breakdown, suited and booted. Though that man came on the show clean, suited and tie. Come on now, the color scheme.
Make sure you follow Dr. Jesse Morse on Twitter, right there on the ticker at Dr. Jesse Morse. Man, he does a hell of a job on Twitter too. I don't know if you've watched his channel. He's already gained 10,000 subscribers this football season already on his Twitter.